Everybody asked last year how Amado plans on fighting Kawaki if Akebei becomes an Otsutsuki because Kawaki has the power Ishikin, yet Amado told Kawaki to his face, "I will stop you if it means protecting my daughter." It's the right question for us as readers to ask because Amado isn't a fighter, and honestly, that's like asking how a guy with a remote plans on beating his own television. You don't box the machine, you press the button and it's that simple. Somewhere in Konoha, there's probably a toaster that's terrified of this man because every appliance that Amado builds eventually turns out to have a hidden setting that nobody know about. And if history is about to repeat itself, Kawaki may have just made the biggest mistake of his life by assuming Amado's greatest weapon is only his intelligence instead of the technology that is quietly living inside of everyone else's body. Join me in today's newest Naruto Explained video where your OBC, your original Boruto chief, takes a look at why Amado should be viewed as a threat when it comes to his warning to Kawaki and why we cannot rule out that when the time comes and Akebei is revealed to be an Otsutsuki, Amado's way of fighting back against Kawaki might have been in our faces the entire time, with his living and breathing weapons being in the midst of Kawaki's very presence without him realizing it. Yes, we're going there. Cyborg sleeper cells, baby. Also, the last few days we've had a dump of videos that were exclusive to Patreon for a few months, and they have made their way to YouTube, from the strongest ninjas to never become Jonin to Daemon's reflection jutsu explained in detail to every type of scientific ninja tech and board to explain to the mega in-depth video breaking down how strong each version of Tsunade is, from Kid Tsunade to Second Ninja War Tsunade up to the present day. I strongly recommend those videos, which will be linked in the description box, and big thank you to the patrons whose pledges over the last few months helped pay for the editing on those videos. So one of the most interesting conversations in the last set of Boruto chapters, it isn't about power levels. That's what everyone's focused on, but that's what you should not be paying the most attention to. It isn't about Jura, the book reading, love-obsessed menace who now has a thing for cats. It isn't about Kashin Koji being captured, our new damsel in distress who makes Jiraiya say, "Are we really sure that this guy has the same DNA as me?" It's the conversation between Kawaki and Amado and the throwaway line that is so simple that it's overlooked because Kawaki was too busy giving Amado flashbacks to when he was getting bullied in high school because Kawaki had this man thrown up by the neck and was looking for a locker to shove him into. Because for the first time, both characters openly admitted they're eventually headed out towards a collision course, and that moment never really set right with me. And after this latest chapter, my Amado senses are tingling in a way that's rivaled only by the tingling in the loins that comes from every time that Daniel Rose Russell shows up on the screen. Kawaki made something crystal clear back when he was threatening Amado. If Akebei is revived through coma and eventually completes the extraction process into becoming a fully fledged Otsutsuki, she's dying. No hesitation, no negotiations, no exceptions. The moment she sprouts a horn, Kawaki's shoving multiple chakra rods into her eye sockets and she's dying because he's not allowing another threat to Naruto to roam free. As far as Kawaki's concerned, once someone becomes an Otsutsuki, they cross the line that cannot be uncrossed. He's already watched Momoshiki consume Boruto by hijacking his body to try to kill Naruto, and he literally killed Boruto for it. He watched Ishiki nearly destroy the shinobi world, and the first thing he saw when he was summoned to the battlefield was his idol, Naruto, getting the life choked out of him. And unless Naruto has some unknown kinks that we don't know about, it's safe to say that Naruto's not enjoying it. To Kawaki, killing Otsutsuki, it wasn't murder. It was pest control. It was public service. He's an Otsutsuki who exists to kill other Otsutsuki if we take Kawaki by his words. It's basically calling the exterminator because space termites have started eating the planet all over again. But Amado's response is what should have every single Boruto fan paying attention, and yet so many, I feel, look the other way. He tells Kawaki that if it comes to that, if you're going to kill my daughter, then I will oppose you with everything that I have. At first glance, that sounds ridiculous. Oppose him? How? This is the same guy whose workout routine probably consists of carrying coffee from one side of the laboratory to the other if we take the anime continuity of the story into account. And in the manga, he smokes so much that I'm in a position where I can't be convinced that he's not going to be winded when he runs from one other side of the room to the other. His lungs are cooked from all that smoking. Amado's not Naruto. He's not Sasuke. He's not even Sasuke low on chakra. He isn't even Shikamaru. He is a scientist. So unless his next invention is the scientific Ninja Glock 9000, how exactly is he planning to stop what is quickly becoming the strongest cyborg he's ever created? Well, I think everyone might be asking the wrong question here. Instead of asking how Amado fights Kawaki, maybe the real question we should be asking is, why are we even assuming that Amado will be the one doing the fighting at all? Because that's never been his role. Ada told us in part 1, Amado does not get his hands dirty. He makes the messes and comes in with the solution to them after the fact. Think about every major conflict Amado's ever been involved in. Did he specifically defeat Jigen? No. He built Kashin Koji to do that. Did he personally end up fighting Ishiki? Again, no. He built Kashin Koji to weaken Ishiki, and then he rolled the dice that Naruto and Sasuke could hold out long enough for Ishiki's lifespan to hit 0. Everything Amado accomplishes is done through someone else doing the legwork. He's less of a warrior and more of a chess player. The pieces do the fighting. He's kind of like Aizen in the first part of Bleach. Aizen stayed hidden in the cut for the longest time, and then he made himself known with his intentions at the end of the Soul Society arc. Amado's the type of player who simply decides when the pieces move. If you're a longtime follower of this channel, especially if you're an OG from the Kryptonian Saiyan days, you guys know that characters like that, they are among my favorites. I could care less about how many gigatons of force someone generates. I don't care about that bullshit. Give me the person who lays out all those plans all day and plays people like buffoons. That's the character I'm probably going to simp over. Which brings us to something that is probably impossible to ignore in my opinion. Every single major cyborg Amado has worked on eventually reveals that there's another hidden function after we had kind of felt like we know everything that there is. Every single time so far. Like, let's start with Kawaki because he was the focus of this last chapter. Originally, we thought that Karma was the biggest surprise. Even Momoshiki was like, bruh, nobody just gets Karma again. That does not happen. That let us know we're watching something truly special. Then Amado revealed, yeah, you know, I secretly rebuilt that thing. Later, we learned that he intentionally limited Kawaki's power and that he could spy on Kawaki through his eyes. Then he demonstrated he could redistribute Ishiki's offensive and defensive capabilities whenever he wanted to. Then those miniature scientific ninja toads, they popped up on Kawaki's body and Amado's like, hey fam, I can give you 100% power that easily. They were tiny enough to remain hidden, and because they're not alive, Kawaki can shrink them down. There's enough to completely regulate his combat output. Every turn of the way, it's like peeling back an onion. You just get more layers that you didn't even know were there. Amado is like one of those weeds in the flower bed. Just when you think you pulled them all up, more sprout up because you missed some of the roots. And now, Kawaki's strongest ability isn't even his anymore. Strongest ability being Ishiki's offensive power. It's something that Amado can adjust whenever he sees fit. That alone should completely change how everyone views Amado, and yet people are still sleeping on Amado based on what I'm seeing. Like, he did not just simply give Kawaki power. He retained influence over it, and whatever additional upgrades that Kawaki gets, Amado is going to make sure that he has some form of leverage over Kawaki. Yes, Amado needs Kawaki. He's made that clear. He needs him to revive his daughter, but he's also made clear numerous times that he will not let anything, including Kawaki, stand in the way of him and his daughter. People view this whole interaction too much from the scope of Kawaki's physically stronger than Amado, so he holds all the cards. But in a franchise that prides itself on deception, you'd think that people would have learned when the almighty three-eyed Madara got taken out by Zetsu, the one person damn near every Naruto fan slept on back when the manga was weekly. Then there's Kashin Koji. Koji spent years believing he escaped Amado's influence and he was in hiding. He developed 10 directions after almost being killed by Ishiki. He was basically humanity's greatest weapon against the future itself, and he was using Boruto as a singularity of fate to try and change that future. And yet, one command, one hidden shutdown sequence that Koji suspected existed, got used on him, and everything ended. Koji wasn't defeated because Kawaki overpowered him, though again, Kawaki could, which goes back to the point that we made prior. Power is not everything. Situational awareness, the element of surprise, and deception are just as, if not more important than power in Naruto. He lost because Amado reminded everyone who still has administrator privileges. Imagine spending years upgrading your gaming PC only for Windows to suddenly announce it needs to restart for updates. That's basically what happened. The strongest future reader in the history of Naruto as far as human beings got hit with the scientific version of updating, please not turn off your device, and then Kawaki proceeded to turn off the device. Then we have Delta, another cyborg and a clone of his daughter Akebei. Another shutdown command, again proving that Amado embedded hidden authority into his cyborgs. Most people assume operated independently, and people were of the belief like, oh, it's just Delta. And then Kashin Koji's like, well, I could have one too. 7 years later, we got confirmation he had one. 6 years later, we got confirmation that Kawaki had one. Notice the pattern. It's not about strength, it's authority. That's a very different thing. Strength asks who wins the fight. Authority asks who gets to decide whether the fight even happens. Again, power is not everything in this franchise. In head-to-head fights, it can decide who usually wins 9 times out of 10, but there's always that 1 out of 10 scenario that you have to account for. In this scenario, Amado keeps ending up with that authority position. And I want you to kind of go back to chapter 35 of Two Blue Vortex. There was something sitting on the desk in the chapter that is hinting that this pattern is going to extend further than we might have been paying attention to. Think about those frogs that were there. At first, they look like decorations. Even Amado hid it in plain sight, saying, "Don't they look so cute?" However, they're not. One frog became Kawaki's regulator for his power. Another we saw was used to take out Kashin Koji. But there are frogs that Amado were working on, and they wouldn't have just been for Kawaki. The number of frogs that we see in the chapter lines up too. How many were there? Well, there was one on the floor in front of Kawaki, and then there are also 3 more on the table. Enough to match the very cyborgs that we were told by Amado that were stronger than Jigen in physical combat. He said that there were several cyborgs, several starts at 3. Jigen wanted them shut down because of their combat strength or due to their overall hacks. 3 frogs, 3 surviving scientific monsters, 3 cyborgs. Knowing Amado, he probably has something for Kashin Koji too. Is that a coincidence? I don't think so. But Boruto and Naruto by extension has never been a franchise that randomly places objects in the background without eventually explaining why they're there. It's why I use Chekhov's gun so much in Naruto when I do those discussions, because usually that stuff hidden in plain sight comes back into play. And this is even more so when we look at the fact that those objects are identical to technology that we've already seen being used. In this scenario, if every frog corresponds to a cyborg like I think, that opens up an uncomfortable possibility. Maybe those frogs aren't simply communication devices. We've seen that they do have more than one function. Amado's already demonstrated that he can observe through Kawaki. That's through that eye. That's why in part 1, Kawaki, when he's crying, didn't cry out of one eye. He's already observed through Delta. He has shut down protocols. He can regulate Kawaki's power. We also know that he has that microscopic ninja tech on a cellular level on every cyborg. That's from Kawaki to Delta to Ada to Daemon. He experimented on all of their bodies. Somebody that is capable of doing something like that is not going to stop. If you follow Amado long enough, one thing becomes very clear. Nothing this man ever builds ever truly has just one function. Every invention has another layer hidden underneath it. Think of it like buying a smartphone only to discover 6 months later that it can also launch satellites and make coffee and file your taxes. That's a hell of a smartphone. And 2044 is probably going to do that. And at this point, if Amado handed me a calculator, I assume that it contains a miniature 10 tails, because that's just how this man operates. He looks at 1 to 10 and says, that's cool, but let's take it to 1,000. And Amado doesn't reveal everything at once. He never has. And that's why I do think that fans are making a dangerous assumption when they conclude that the shutdown code is the end of Amado here. Because I personally feel like a shutdown isn't the final evolution of Amado's character. It's merely the first one. And for someone like Amado, a scientist at heart, enough is never truly enough. There is always more to explore. Like I've mentioned in past videos, that thirst for power was one of the weaknesses of Alexander the Great when you look back at his life. He was a brilliant military mind and a strategist and a leader, a visionary, yet his eyes continued to go past the borders of his ever-expanding kingdom. He wanted more and more. Had he set those ambitions aside and focused on ruling what he had, he would have been viewed as a more legendary person than he was remembered as. The same is true for Amado, a brilliant scientist, unlike something anyone has ever seen before in Naruto, and yet he can't get past his own grief and his obsession and his thirst for knowledge. I don't think that Amado stops at control, but let's just play devil's advocate, because anytime that we take a discussion like this, we try to look at the other side of the argument too. So let's just say that Amado can't control anyone. Let's say he can only shut them down. Even then, there's still a problem, because shutdown itself still proves something far more important. It proves that Amado never stopped simply at enhancing the car inners. We know that they have been altered on a cellular level. They don't have the bodies that they were born with. They have been completely retooled. That means that that authority for that shutdown command is in all their body. Those shutdown codes don't exist because Amado's paranoid. That's part of it, but they also exist because he fundamentally refuses to create anything that he cannot eventually reclaim. It's the irony. He took their agency to experiment on them, and he also maintained control. And he was not the leader of Kara, and yet all the Kara cyborgs, from Kawaki to Delta, Ada to Daemon to Boro, Victor, Kashin Koji, etc., Amado was really the one in control, even though Jigen was a leader. So if that's his philosophy, why would he stop at an emergency off switch? I personally don't think that he would, but I would like to ask you this. If you're designing humanity's strongest cyborg, specifically to kill an alien vessel in Jigen, then kill that alien god when he revives, why would you settle for an off switch when you could also build an override? There are two different design philosophies to look at. One prepares for failure. The other one prepares for betrayal. And if there's one lesson that Amado has learned throughout his life, it's that life is unpredictable and betrayal isn't a possibility. Instead, betrayal is an inevitability. Jigen was Ishiki's vessel. Ishiki was planning to destroy humanity. Amado would have got his daughter back and she'd have been on a dying planet. Code eventually turned on Amado. Kashin Koji eventually rebelled against Amado by not doing what he was supposed to do in that Ishiki fight, which was lay down and die. Kawaki's also made it crystal clear he'll oppose Amado if Akebei becomes an Otsutsuki. Now, in all those scenarios, from Code, since he was trying to avenge Jigen and Ishiki, people that he worshiped, to Kashin Koji, who's like, bruh, I didn't sign up for a suicide mission, to Kawaki, who just views that he's trying to do what's right by Naruto. All these characters have a ironclad reason for taking a stand against Amado, but look at it from Amado's perspective. Try not to just look at it from the scope and perspective of your favorite character, which is something that too many people in this fandom do. Look at it from the other shoe. Almost every important relationship in this man's life has eventually turned into some type of passive aggressive or direct conflict. So why wouldn't his technology reflect that? And there are more wild cards in this situation. You got Code, you got Ada, you got Daemon. Officially, they were supposed to be destroyed. Jigen viewed their abilities as too dangerous. Amado, we could assume, complied with that. We can assume that they had a shutdown code, Amado used it, and Boro was supposed to destroy them, but they were alive. And that's one question so many people have asked over the years. How exactly did two cyborgs that Jigen felt threatened by survive their own execution? Why did Boro save them? Well, now you have a chance for a really good flashback. And people just went with, well, he was a simp for Ada. But when you look at how Ada's Senrigan works, she's able to see the things going on in the present as well as things that happened in the past. But we also know that when you look at what her charm ability is, her charm ability is simply omnipotence. She wanted to be loved and protected by people that are not blood relatives or Otsutsuki. Killing Ada does not reverse omnipotence. Omnipotence is more than just the memory swap. Have to throw that out there because there are still people who are just kind of limited to omnipotence. Her charm effect is also part of that. If Amado shut her down, that charm effect is still in effect, because if killing her doesn't reverse it, leaving her unconscious wouldn't do it either. At some point she would have came back to, and which is how she would have been able to view everything. That would also explain why someone like Amado didn't know what happened. Amado might have shut down Ada. Amado, as we know, did not understand what the true nature of her power was. Had he actually known what omnipotence is, probably would have made sure that Boro did what needed to be done. Now, look at it from Amado's perspective and look at the lessons that you learn. Now that you know Ada's alive, and same with Daemon and etc. Wouldn't you try to make sure there are more safeguards? Look at what happens every time Amado loses some form of control. Amado manipulates the situation to regain some form of leverage. When you look at Code, Amado has never used a shutdown command on Code, but based on the preponderance of evidence, we can assume that he probably has one. From a storytelling perspective, someone like Amado having some form of control over those cyborgs that were supposed to be destroyed, it all goes back to why the cyborgs were even enhanced in the first place. Why did Amado enhance all those human beings with all these cyberkinetic things? It wasn't random experimentation. Amado built monsters because he needed enough overwhelming force to defeat Jigen. And it goes back to something that too many fans don't really grapple with. You have to be at a bare minimum 2 to 3 tiers higher than people that you're fighting against in terms of a collective to be able to take them out. You have to be extremely strong to take out people that are of a collective roughly the same level of strength. When you have a group of combatants that we're told are stronger than Jigen by himself couldn't take them out. But having, say, 4 Jigen level fighters go up against someone like Ishiki, even someone like Ishiki would have a hard time. Especially if Amado was gauging them to be able to fight Ishiki long enough for Ishiki's lifespan to eventually run out. Look at all the different abilities that these characters have. One is able to see things in real time. One is able to reflect murderous intent. One is able to reflect physical attacks. Another one's able to attack out the blind spot. There are different things that could be used to take on a fighter of that level. And that's where there's some irony here. Those creations that Amado built to take out Jigen and then take out Ishiki may ultimately be what Amado has to use to take on Kawaki, who is basically Ishiki's successor in this scenario. From Amado's perspective, if you look at Kawaki, he is becoming closer and closer to what Ishiki was, what he represented. Kawaki doesn't necessarily want to destroy the planet, but he has a lot of the negative traits that you have. Amado's main goal is his daughter. If Kawaki is going to take out Amado's daughter, Amado needs something to protect her. And the Buddhism symbolism makes it even more fascinating, because throughout Buddhism, one of the greatest sources of suffering is attachment. Not love, attachment. The refusal to let go. The desperate need to hold on to something that's already gone. That should sound familiar. That's Amado. Everything he's done, every lie, every betrayal, every scientific breakthrough has all revolved around one person, his daughter. He refuses to accept her death. Instead of grieving, he's trying to outsmart impermanence itself. He's attempting to force karma into obeying him. And that's the beautiful irony of his character. The Otsutsuki use karma to overwrite bodies and resurrect themselves because they themselves are attached to life. Both are attempting to deny the natural order. Amado, ironically, is doing the same thing. Otsutsuki do it through alien biology, and Amado's doing it through technology. Different methods, it's the same temptation though. Even the name Koma has a different meaning when you take that into account. The Otsutsuki use Koma to seize ownership of someone else's body to cheat death. Amado is trying to take Koma, put it on the clone of his daughter. She has her memories, but he wants her soul inside of that body. That's why he can't do Edo Tensei. Edo Tensei is a dead body. That's why he can't do something like that. I have to throw that out there because every time I mention this, somebody asks, why doesn't he just use Edo Tensei? Living, breathing body. Edo Tensei are not living and breathing. When you look at Amado, there's a terrifying parallel there. Even though he himself hasn't necessarily become an Otsutsuki, he's basically carried out the Otsutsuki philosophy through technology. Control, ownership, domination, and rebirth. Those are all things you can attach with Amado. The belief that another living being can become an extension of your will, even if it goes against their own desires. And that brings us all the way back to Kawaki. Amado said, I'm going to kill your daughter if need be. Amado said, I'm going to stand up to you. Now we may have an idea of how he stands up to him. Obviously, if you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing, click here on the left, check out more videos from Naruto Explained, or click here on the right to check out this video that YouTube says you would probably enjoy.